I guess you're going to see the recording. Okay, wonderful. So, good evening and welcome to Adoption Happy Hour presented by NAAP, National Association of Adoptees and Parents. Our mission is to unify the adoption community and amplify diverse voices through dialogue, education, connection, and healing. I am Patricia Knight Meyer, and I'm joined tonight by NAAP board members Beth Story and Jennifer Falsing, and featured guest Diane Wheaton. We are delighted to welcome attendees from across the country and around the world. Whether you've been part of this community for years or you're joining for us for the very first time, we're grateful that you're here. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. Before we begin our conversation with tonight's guest, we have just a few housekeeping notes to share. So do you talk and then I read the little window, or we're going to go straight into the welcome, Beth?
It should be on the screen right now.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read this part too. And then you're going to share the updates. Okay. So this is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and may be shared in our private happy hour group on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. If you're not following us on our private Facebook group, please do, because that's where you're going to get a link to tonight's recording as well as other nights' recordings. Please remain on mute and raise your hand on screen or on the virtual hand to be recognized. You may post your questions or comments in chat. And if you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thoughts, please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988. And I think we're going to hand it over to Beth, and she's going to make a few announcements before we begin the evening's conversation with our guest.
Yes, we want to remind you about all of NAAP's programming. Happy Hour that you are attending right now is the first and the third Friday of each month. Patricia hosts the third Friday and Greg hosts the first. And we are really thankful to have both of them on board with us. We have other programs throughout the month. Dr. Joyce hosts our reunion group, Lost and Found, Then What? Exploration After Reunion. She will be up on the 24th of this month. So a good opportunity to get in with a group of folks all going through reunion together. We also have First Families with Amy Seek, birth parents journeying together, and that group meets on the second Thursday. So they should be up on the 12th of March again. And then we close out each month with Dr. Liz DeBetta's Migrating Toward Wholeness, Rewriting Adoption Narratives in the Constellation. Her program this month will be on the 26th. So you can see there are lots of opportunities each month to be with the adoption community through NAAP's events. And then we are going to talk about the big event coming up. Let me switch slides here. Okay, Untangling Our Roots will be March 19th through the 22nd in Atlanta. This is an event that we host alongside of Right to Know, and this year also DNA Angels is a part of the event. Third time for this conference that will unite the adoption, assisted reproduction, and MPE communities into one powerful voice. It will be held at the Wyndham Atlanta Buckhead. And you will want to stay right there at that hotel. Now, the special rate that we've secured is $149 a night. You do want to make your reservations right on the Untangling Our Roots website. The group rate has been extended, but I'm not sure exactly for how long yet. So if you haven't gotten a room and you're going to the conference, please make your reservation quickly. You can see that there are a variety of options. If you can't attend the entire conference, you can go for one day, you can go for the weekend, you can even attend just Sunday or just the Thursday evening reception and entertainment. We also have a special ticket for a significant other. So all of these options are on the website, and I'm going to drop the link for that in the chat in just a couple of minutes. We have t-shirts each year. Some of the old designs will be available as well, but these are the new designs for this year. And while there are a few oh dear, didn't mean to do that. While there are a few t-shirts for sale at the event, you can order them online, and most people will do go ahead and order theirs ahead of time online, and then you can wear it there. So, let's see, I think I have one more slide. It's going to let me do it. Okay, Untangling Our Roots, Standing Strong, Standing Together. It is a great event, and those who have gone before can attest to that. And each year we have many new people, so we hope that there will be some new folks that attend again this time. And I am done sharing.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, this is the fun, exciting part. We are going to welcome Diane Wheaton to join us this evening. I don't know if everybody can see, but her book is called Finding Loretta, An Adopted Daughter's Search to Define Family. This book is for fans of Danny Shapiro's Inheritance and Nicole Chung's All You Can Ever Know, a debut memoir from a midlife adoptee who, just as she's meeting biological family for the first time, unearths a secret kept from her for 15 years by her adoptive parents. This shocking disclosure complicates her already complicated feelings for them, and she finds herself faced with an important decision, one that feels impossible to make, but which results in a level of healing she could never have anticipated. A touching memoir of self-discovery, Finding Loretta is Diane's tale of searching for history, roots, and family. Diane Wheaton is a reunited adoptee, a wife, mother, and grandmother. When she is not writing, Diane enjoys reading, painting, gardening, bread making, and swimming. She's a member of the National Association of Memoir Writers and was a contributing author to the ANYA Project's adult adoptee anthology, Flip the Script. Diane lives in California with her husband and their two Siamese-mix cats, Stella and Luna. So welcome, Diane. From what I understand, you're going to begin with a little bit of a reading from your book for us.
Yes, I do. Hello, everybody. This is really a pleasure to be here tonight. And yeah, I'll read an excerpt from my book. This particular passage takes place the afternoon that I'm meeting my birth mother for the first time in person. I'm in a hotel. I've been getting ready. She delayed it, and now I'm getting ready to go downstairs into the hotel lobby to meet her in person for the first time. Um, I started my search when I was in my late 40s, so I had waited a long time to meet her and knew nothing about her, and we had met on the phone just 2 months previous to meeting to this date, and I had only received one photo of her. And we had talked on the phone, maybe weekly, pretty often, but I still didn't know her that well. And so this is the part where I'm in the room and getting ready to meet Frances, my birth mother. Frances, that's what she wanted me to call her. She told me that when I write to her, I could put Mom in parentheses after her name. She said that's what my older sister Stephanie had done for years, and it seemed to work well. I know you have a mother already, even though I'm your mother too. Your mother raised you, and I know that's what you call her, so just call me Frances. So that's what I called her, Frances. My first mother was now my second. I pictured Frances at home preparing to meet me again. I imagine the last time she had seen me was as a newborn, a lifetime away for both of us. Memories that had lain dormant for decades might be resurfacing as she reflected on that moment. I was a reminder of the past that she had been forced to forget, but now had to remember. And here I was, back in her life. My mere presence probably caused her subconscious to pull up memories of my father, her grief, her shame, and her loss. I guessed these were bubbling to the surface as she got dressed, getting ready to meet me. I felt for her. Today, I wanted her to see that I was happy, that I had lived a good life. I wanted to relieve the hurt and shame she had buried long ago. I wanted her to feel better. Maybe I wanted to feel better too. Perhaps I was trying to convince us both that my being adopted had turned out okay. After all, that it had been bearable for both of us. Even though we had both experienced trauma from our separation, we had survived. And hey, here we were, together again against all odds. We had endured. The celebration would, of course, be tinged with sadness as well. It was sad for both of us because we had spent our lifetimes apart from each other, and no matter how well no matter how well this meeting went, we couldn't fix the past. Nobody could. It was time. I looked around the room. The bed was made and the room picked up. The eucalyptus lavender candle I had brought sat on the nightstand, ready to be lit. The CD player waited atop the hotel dresser, ready for me to push play. Soon, Andrea Bocelli's Romanza album would fill the air, together with the candle's warm scent, hopefully calming our nerves and helping our senses hold this moment. A small navy blue photo album wrapped with silver ribbon lay on the small table awaiting Frances. I'd made the album for her, filling it with photographs from my childhood. I thought that Frances might have had fantasies about my life, just as I had about hers. Since she never saw me again after I was 2 weeks old, she might want to see what I looked like as a 4-month-old, a 6-month-old, a toddler, and even as an older child and teenager. She seemed just as curious about my adoptive parents as I was about my siblings. So I also included a few snapshots of my adoptive parents and my brother John. I also had some photos of Michael, Heather, and Travis, as well as a poem I had written about her when I was 16. I took one last look at the photograph Frances had sent me 2 months earlier. Just one more look to be sure who it was I'd be looking for downstairs. I was fairly confident I'd recognize my mother right away. I wanted to believe this. It was time to go. I placed Frances's photograph on the nightstand, grabbed my room card, and took one last look around and at myself in the mirror. I saw my children in my reflection and wondered, after meeting my mother in person, would I now see her in my reflection as well? I slowly closed the door, knowing that the next time I stepped over the threshold of this room, my mother would be beside me. So that was a moment, definitely.
That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
for anyone who's been in a reunion, I think I can certainly relate to that tension in those few moments right before you're about to. It's like I described it as being on the very beginning of the roller coaster when it's inching up the top of the hill and you know you're about to take that huge plunge. Um,
Yes.
and you could feel the tension of that in that passage that you read. I also love how you talked about the mirror, how you looked in the mirror, because we all know we talk a lot about how we need our families to mirror, our biological families to mirror us, and acknowledging, especially if you'd spoken with me earlier about people who don't understand adoption wounds, acknowledging that there are these missing aspects of our reflection. And you even mentioned that your book is for readers of Dani Shapiro's Inheritance, and she begins her book talking about how she studies her face in the mirror, trying to make sense of it because she doesn't look like anyone in her family.
Right.
So,
That
yeah,
we can
just
relate to as well,
yeah,
adoptees.
so well done. And as I read your book, I was struck by how many universal experiences that you capture, the complicated relationships with birth families and the lifelong work of integrating two families into oneself. Um, I would like to read, I have pulled out a few passages that I'd like to discuss, like read, and then we can talk about them a little bit. And it feels like a good place to start is the photo that you saw that you had seen of her before you actually met her. And in that, when you wrote that when you first saw this photo of her, she was, and this is the quote from your book, she wasn't the little Southern grandmother I had envisioned, dressed in a flowered print cotton shirt dress with black flats and pearls, with white hair combed into a simple bob. She was also not the fantasy mother I dreamed about who wore Ann Taylor suits and carried a leather envelope purse. She's not what I expected. Um, and so when we meet our birth families, there is this moment when fantasy collides with reality, and we're left grieving the story that we had told ourselves for so many years or that was told to us. Um, I had a similar disorienting experience when I met my first mother, and I was shocked to feel like I didn't see myself in her and feel like, if anything, like I knew myself less. So, what was it like for you in this moment when you saw this picture of this woman that was not what you expected?
Well, when I saw the photo of her, yeah, I was shocked because yes, she was not at all what I had fantasized. But I about. But I told myself that that might have just been a fluke because one of my good friends, we dissected the photo and really looked at everything. I look at her shoes, look at the room she's in, and we decided she was dressed to go to a Christmas party. So that's what we, decided on. So I felt like that was kind of a fluke photo, like that wasn't her like real self. She was all
Mhm.
dressed up to go to a party. So when I met her in person, your thoughts. I realized that no, this is her, and and um, and it was yeah, it's just so mixed up. You're just I mean, I was so sky high excited to meet her, and you're in, the lot, just all the people around the lobby, and you're meeting her and you're nervous, and it took a long time for me to process it, and I'm not very good at processing things like that in the moment, for sure. I really need that downtime to really
Right.
look at things. But it was I hate to say it, but I was disappointed. And I felt like you did, Patricia, also. I don't, that I couldn't see myself in her. At all. I couldn't relate to her very well. But it was, and yet I was so excited to be around her. But
Yeah.
it was a very, conflicting
Yeah. And
feeling.
I think the expectation is that you're going to walk in the room and see someone who looks like you.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just about maybe
Hmm.
you took more after your birth father, and you didn't realize it.
Right,
Um,
right.
so in addition to that, I'd like to read a little bit about what I called like the brutal honesty and digging a little bit more into this, trying to come to terms with the reality versus the fantasy. Um, Later in the book, you guys go to a restaurant and have a meal together, and you write, eating lunch at a seaside restaurant should have been wonderful. I had expected it to be back when I had illusions, or rather delusions, and was holding on to a fantasy of who Frances was supposed to be. And today, observing Frances, I did not like her. I wondered if I even wanted a relationship with her, yet not having one seemed distressing. And being able to write I did not like her is I in my book I did a similar thing. I'm like, I put it out there, and it was so hard because that people are going to read this.
Mhm.
And my experience was that my immediate gut feeling was there are so many adoptees who want to have this moment. How can I like not be so thrilled with this? How can I not be so happy with this birth mother I've got? Um, how did you give yourself permission to feel those complicated feelings, but most importantly, write about it?
Well, in writing memoir, you have to write your truth. That no matter what it is, how hard it is, you want your reader to be along with you on your journey. This is you're writing and sharing how you felt, and you need to let your reader know what you're feeling. And I think it's very also for me as a writing this, I think it's very cathartic being honest with myself as well, because that was my truth in that moment. Um, and I have to say that I do tell, in my book, my mother shocked me and told a huge secret the day before. So there were reasons why I didn't like her. And it
Yeah.
wasn't just her looks, but there were reasons why I didn't like her and felt very uncomfortable with her, wasn't sure about her. But you have to write and be honest and tell your truth, and I think in writing, I like Joan Didion's quote, I don't know what I think until I write it down. And I think that really clarifies a lot when your writing is healing. But
Yes.
yeah, you definitely want your readers to know how you're feeling in that moment. That's your journey. That's the truth. And if you're not honest, I think it comes through. And
And I think early on, it's so intense for a first mother to be going through that,
Mhm.
and they still have a lot of shame and are still coping with and coming out about it all.
Mhm.
And so I think she had asked you to keep a bunch of secrets because she had been carrying the weight of a bunch of secrets in her life.
Right.
But the irony of that is that your parents also your raising parents were very much secret keepers,
Mhm.
and they had asked you to keep a lot of secrets. And
Right.
even in finding your first mother, you felt like you had to keep that a secret. It seemed to me while reading the book you were being asked to keep secrets from every side.
I was.
And that
Yes.
probably you probably thought that a lot of that was going to go away once you found your
Yes.
person. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I certainly didn't think my birth mother would be like my adoptive parents.
Right.
Yeah.
And you wrote about your adoptive parents. I still long to tell them about my search, but I was afraid of their reaction. Whatever happened on the search, my biological family had to be kept secret.
Mhm.
Um, how do you feel about talking about the secret your parents asked you to keep from your children?
Um, oh, fine. Yeah. Yeah, how do I was I all right with that? You mean, is that what you're asking me?
Well, I mean, just
Yeah.
sharing it and how it made you feel, and then, how you dealt with it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I knew what they had to, if I wanted to keep my relationship with my adoptive parents, there's no way that my kids, when they were old enough, they could tell my parents. And they were old enough, they were teenagers, and I hated having to ask them not to tell my adoptive parents that I had found, my birth family. But if I wanted to, and we all wanted a relationship with my parents, so that was just the rule. That was just it. Yeah.
And before that, they had asked you not to tell your children that you were adopted.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huge, huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if they didn't want your children to know that you were adopted, they really,
Right.
but you did eventually tell your daughter asked you, or how did that?
Yes. My daughter was around 5, 6 years old when she asked if I had come out of grandmother's tummy like she came out of mine. And I just was honest with her. I was always going to be honest with my kids, even though because I grew up with not honesty. So I was going to be honest with my kids. And so I did tell her at that age. Yeah. She understood what she could understand. And as she got older, she understood more, what
Mm,
she could understand. But, she ended up telling it's in the book, she ended up telling my adopted parents, yeah, like a week later. So that did not go over very well. And
right.
it was a huge problem down the road. As 15 years later, I found out what they had done. Yeah, so that was very, very difficult. Yeah, that was really hard. My parents didn't speak to me for a year. Yeah, yeah, over that. There was more than that, but that was the minimum.
Yeah.
It was very hard. Very,
And
very
and
hard.
and in asking you to keep that, in saying that they thought that if your children knew that you were adopted, that your children would think of them as less than real grandparents. That
Right,
implied a lot about what they believed about the parental relationship
right, right.
as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and
Even with
then
my in-laws. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then going back to your first mother and the secret she was asking you to keep. Eventually, though, you did get her to become more comfortable with the truth.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I had to force it.
yeah.
I had the backing of I am one of three uh, daughters that my mother relinquished. So I have an older sister, and I'm number two of seven kids that she had. But so I have a younger sister, 2 years younger, that she had been in reunion like 15 years before me. And so I had the backing of her to help me meet my siblings that my mother had raised. She had four children that she raised with her husband. So that was, like the little push, but we had to force the situation. She kept promising, oh yeah, it'll happen soon. It'll
Hmm.
happen. I'm just not ready yet, maybe in a couple months. So anyway, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
that was
I'm glad
hard.
that you were able to meet all of your siblings.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
looking
good.
back, I would not have done that, what I did. Again,
Yeah,
would not have forced it that way, but at
yeah,
all. But, yeah, you just don't know what you're doing sometimes, and you're desperate, and, you just, yeah, hard.
yeah,
And I was young,
right.
or younger.
Yeah. I'd like to move on to talking about the whole process of the coming out of the fog.
Hmm.
You wrote, I was coming out of the fog and it felt good. I was awakening to the fact that my beginnings had been kept secret by several entities, the government, society, and my parents. It was infuriating. It wasn't fair that all these people kept me from knowing who or where I came from. And then I jumped ahead a little bit. I was still treated by the government like a perpetual child, not allowed to know about my birth, parents, ethnicity, or history.
Hmm.
Um, this passage obviously speaks to the infantilization of by government systems, being denied information for our own good. Um,
Hmm.
how did that, when and where did all of this coming out of the fog happen? Did it happen through your reunion, before your reunion? How
Oh,
did
before
this
before my
evolve?
reunion. Before my reunion, and I had found online at the time when I began searching the California Adoptees group online, and they were very, very helpful in helping me start my search. And one book was the Primal Wound book that I was told to read, and I was so hungry for. I just read every book. I still have them, on adoptees and adoption and. Um, so that's when I found out when I read Primal Wound about coming out of the fog and what the fog meant. And I felt very validated, I think, more than anything. When I started reading that book, right away, the pages just, jumped at me, and I felt like this is me. This is how I feel. This is so touching for me. And so I felt more validated than anger. I know I experienced some grief and sadness with the fact that um, these entities do hold back from us, being able to find our families. Certainly, when we're older, and we should have some documentation. Everything is so kept secret, and
Mhm.
but I think I felt very validated, and I think validated and sad, yeah, about everything. And I didn't
Yeah.
feel alone as much either. Yeah, reading her book.
So what was the journey for how you actually found your birth mother?
Well, I started with the California adoptees, and they told me right off the bat, everything that your adoptive parents told you, just don't believe it, so you have to go by facts, not what they said. So we started, right away. I started sending to Sacramento. I was born in California, uh, to find out where I was born. And and everything I was finding out was not what my parents had told me, which wasn't that much anyway. And so then I found out, I got 8 pages back from the county, Alameda County, with my caseworker. So I had a lot of information on my birth family, of course, non-identifying, but, I was born in a Booth Memorial Hospital. It was Salvation Army up in Oakland, and they had just started having caseworkers that would help you find your birth families. So that is how I found that who's connected with my birth mother. It took a while. My mother didn't respond right away, and I think it took 6 months, for her to finally respond. But I was very fortunate that I had been born in a Booth hospital. So that helped a lot. Otherwise, my my birth name, my mother's maiden name, and would have been impossible to have found in the state of Tennessee. There were so many. so many of the surnames there. Would have been we tried. It was just it would have been impossible to we could I don't think I would have ever found her, and my birth side on the DNA, they're it's very distant cousins.
Hmm.
So it would have been hard to have found her. Yeah. So I'm very grateful for that.
And as a child, you came across some paperwork, and is that's related to the title of your book,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, yes. I found my birth name when I was 19 accidentally. So, and you just think like, wow, my parents had this. They knew this and they never told me, that my birth name, and that would have helped me so much. It's that's sad, that's the part of being an adopted child that, why didn't they share that with me? Yeah, it's so,
Did
yeah.
you bring that to your mother? Did you let her know? Did you have that conversation?
Oh gosh, no,
No.
no. There were three copies of my adoption decree, and I took one up to my bedroom. I'm 19 years old, still living at home. And I went and told a girl, would tell a girlfriend, left in the bottom of my drawer in my bedroom upstairs. And I came home to look at it again that night, and it was gone. And so all these years, my mother lived till she was 88, my adoptive mom. All these years, 19 to 88 to, when I was 19. And we never said a word about it. She knew that I knew, and I knew that she knew. And we never, ever,
Said a
that,
word.
yes,
You,
communication. Yeah.
and how many years were you in reunion between when you found your first mother and your other siblings and your parents passed? Was
Let's
that
see. I found my mother in 2004, and my parents passed in 2000, 5 years.
five
Yeah.
years? That's a long time to carry something like that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you talked about sitting with your sister outside your parents' home.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, my sister was down. I wanted to show her where I lived. And of course, she wanted to know too. And we drove past the house that I grew up in, since I was 10 with my family. And we sat there and we debated on how we could go in together. And, she could just be a friend, or, we didn't know. We thought of all these different things, so she could meet my parents and go in the house that, that I was a child and teenager in. And we decided at the very end that it was just too risky, that they probably, my parents could see there would be a resemblance or something or a mannerisms.
Hmm.
And so we didn't. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So I wanted so much to tell my parents. I was so happy to have found my birth mother and family. And and I wanted to share that with them so bad, but yeah, I just couldn't. I was too scared. I had fear of rejection
Yeah.
from them.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the end of their lives, they depended heavily on you to care for them.
Mhm.
And do you think that it was easier to care for them having found this mother of yours, or would it have been, or was it harder? Did it give you some kind of grace to make it easier for them expecting you to care for them?
I think, Patricia, I think certainly I did a lot of thinking and writing about this, how I could have done this. And I really do believe that finding my roots, finding my family, really helped helped me dealing with my parents. I didn't feel the angst as much between us. And I didn't feel so alone. Like when they were, that was the one thing that I felt initially going for a search is that they were getting older. And I realized even though I had my children and my husband's family, which is all wonderful, I still felt like, oh, these people, my parents, my adopted parents, were going to be gone. And there was no one left in my family. And
Mhm.
I felt very alone with that on that section of me. So I think with my parents, because they both had health issues and my father had Alzheimer's and it was, we had caregivers. I think knowing that I had my family, that I had my sister, I had my mother, and I was meeting family. I think that really helped me a lot. Yeah, and
They acted like a support system.
absolutely, they
Yeah.
did, and they did.
Yeah.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
wasn't alone on that my side. Yeah.
Hmm.
I felt
That's
grounded.
beautiful.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's beautiful. Um, you also wrote, and I think this is one of my favorite things that you wrote. Adoption is complex, messy, layered, vulnerable, and full of contradictions.
Hmm.
It's a paradox. I will always mourn the loss of my birth family, and I cannot fathom my life without my adoptive parents, my brother, or my grandparents. I
Hmm.
cannot separate the two feelings. They remain unresolved and always will be, coexisting in my mind like two sides to a coin. It's as if I live between two bridges, my adoptive family and my birth family. I cannot choose between them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, this paradox is universal to our community.
Hmm.
Um, and you use the metaphor of two bridges.
Hmm.
Uh, it just touched me so much because I think that we all, whoever's been in a reunion understands that that dynamic is so hard just to navigate family holidays and just deal with all the emotions it stirs up. Um, how are you with your biological family today? And how do you still feel like you have to balance those two worlds?
Um, I don't need to balance the two worlds because my parents are passed and there isn't anyone in I'm not connected to anyone in my adopted family. So there's that. But I do have a good I don't, I think in reunion, and it's been 20 years. Not that I've met everyone in maybe 10 years at the most with my other parts of other members of my family, my mother's side and father's. Um, you have relationships with some and you don't connect with others. And I feel okay with that. I'm very happy with the relationships I have with my cousins and siblings and feel very grateful for that. And it's okay that I don't. Um, I think it's hard to sometimes have in reunion a really you don't always connect because you've been raised differently,
Mhm.
and there's different memories and just different. It's just very different. But I've connected with some of it's a really good relationship on my father's side too. So I'm really
Yeah.
I feel really good about it. I just wanted to say something about that, Patricia. So many times you hear non-adoptees and they ask me that question, and I know they must ask everyone here who's adopted. They always seem to ask, well, wouldn't you choose to be with your natural family, did you want, there's like always has to be like a choice. And that's what brought me up, thinking about that. And I can't choose. Yeah, I
Mm.
can't choose at all. Yeah, between
It's like, for me, it's like choosing between two children that you love. I mean,
yes, exactly.
even though each child can have their quirks and make you furious sometimes, like you still
Right.
love your two children. They're
Yes,
different entities, but you still love them. Yeah.
absolutely, exactly. So yeah.
So you did find your birth father,
Yes,
his family,
through DNA.
but was he had passed or
Yes, a long time ago. He had passed, but I was able to have a really good relationship with my uncle and my aunt, and before they passed, just a year and a half ago, and then I have cousins. So, and I have a sibling. I have siblings too, and one sibling that I really love.
did you get the sense that sort of in your personality or the way you process the world or your features that you tended to lean more into one family versus the other? Did
Absolutely.
did you get that feeling with your birth father's side?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Right away.
That
Yeah.
was a feeling of like, these are my people kind of
Yes.
feeling. Yeah. Yeah. I had that with my birth father too. And so when I was reading your story, that resonated with mine. And I think that's why I had such and maybe you did too, this lacking feeling in my reunion with my first mother. I think
Mhm.
it was truthfully in all child parent relationships there we all have that child that takes after the dad or takes after the mom, and I think that sometimes it's just, are you
Mhm.
connecting with the one you take the most after?
Yeah, my mother has said that to me the day I met her, that she's right away, she's told me I look just like my father. And a couple hours later she said, you have your father's personality. And it's funny
Wow.
because I never really thought of him that much. I always thought about my birth
Hmm.
mother more, but
Hmm.
no, I'm very much the artist, the in me is from him, and yeah, I'm very much
Yeah.
like my dad. Yeah,
In Danny Shapiro's book, for folks that don't know about it, she was found out she was donor conceived, and she grew up believing, she had one father, and then finds out he's not her father, and then she finally meets her birth father, who she stalks online first, and reading her words, it was similar as well, that she talks about. I mean, she's like, it wasn't just that I look like him. She's like, I had mannerisms like him. I gestured like him. And it was it's an
yes,
interesting, it's the way she writes about that it's very, I don't even have the right words for it. It's like a recognition of some sort of recognition lights up inside you when you make that connection. And she writes about it beautifully, as did you in your book.
that's a good.
Um, you had wrote about your birth father. My heart dropped. I had so hoped he was still alive, but he had been gone a long time already, passing away in 1992 when he was only 62 years old. The sorrow of not ever getting to know him or to ever see him or hear his voice will always remain with me.
Mhm.
And, I think that's the thing that when being in reunion and having had the blessings of being in reunion with both sides of the family, I always try to remember and hold that this does not happen for everybody, and it's not always good, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
Um, and
Right.
I always try to, acknowledge that.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
did you find it that you had to grieve that in any way? How did you
Oh
process
yeah,
that grief?
I did. Yeah, definitely. Over time, processing the grief, and I think having my uncle, who I found out later was a full uncle. There's a story with that I write about as well.
Wow.
Was just so wonderful to know through DNA. But I also went to his gravesite, made a point of driving to South Carolina and my husband and I, I went to his gravesite, and that was very meaningful and so good for me to have done. And uh, that really helped a lot, I think, going there and being there.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely was a process of grieving, but I and in that process of grieving, I'm writing the way I just, the way I found out about him and who he was. I mean, he must have been a character. But there was also really, the family has good things to say about him. They loved him a lot, and he was, really a sweet person. And so I think, and they've given me his original artwork because he was a fantastic artist. I mean, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And my cousins gave me his original artwork. So I think there's that in honoring him, as we do in grieving. I think that really helps a lot to process that. And I have that, and I have his flag, he was a veteran.
Wonderful.
And I think all of that is honoring and can be passed down, with family
Mm-hmm.
now. So
Yeah.
it helps.
And you were a gift to them as well, because he was passed and they thought they would never see
Yeah.
anyone or anything that was his likeness. And so, in a way, when you showed up, they got a
Mhm.
little more of him in the process,
Yes, my uncle and my aunt. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's
It took me a
beautiful.
long time to send the letter to my uncle, but I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I
Yeah.
worked up the courage finally and did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It oftentimes when I've heard people say, well, they had a bad reunion, why would they ever want to do it again? I was like, because the other one might be good.
Yes,
The
right,
other one
right,
might be good.
right, right.
So we have about 10 minutes left, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. I want to read one last thing that I think ends on a very strong, beautiful note. And then if there's anything else you want to add, you can just share it. So you wrote about the paradox that we all live with. You wrote, I have learned that I've lived with an underlying trauma from adoption. I became adaptive, a people pleaser, so I could fit into my adoptive family, changing like a chameleon to be whoever you wanted me to be, because I didn't know who I was to begin with. Yet, being an adoptee doesn't define me. It's just a word that means something that happened to me. Surely it's a powerful undercurrent in my life. but I've learned to swim through and around the strong tide, finding myself standing strong on the sands of time. I get chill bumps when I read that. It's just so beautiful. And
Thank
you
you.
are a swimmer. This is something you
Yes.
do daily. Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Love
Um,
the water. Yeah.
so that's just one of another just beautiful passage from your book.
Hmm.
So is there anything you'd like to add in the next few minutes before we open it up to Q&A?
I'm trying to think. I think my personal feeling about a reunion and searching is I wish this for all adoptees. Um, and I think even if things don't turn out, because I have relationships that didn't turn out in my reunion, it's still worth knowing. I mean, I still know, you know, my ethnicity, which I didn't know. I knew nothing. I know my roots. I know my ancestors. I think that's all worth knowing, to have if you don't have that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know things are open adoption, these days, but for those of us who are closed adoption and maybe there are parents in open adoption who aren't going to say anything, I think it's worth searching and worth taking a risk. You just have to be, strong, and I think, to work through things, absolutely. But I think it is worth knowing. That's
Yeah. And even though there's a lot of we're heading toward more and more open adoptions, as we know, a lot of open adoptions are really closed adoptions
hmm
with a little more information involved. I
hmm
think even in those reunions or managing relationships once children turn 18 and all of that, they have some different hurdles, but a
yeah.
lot also they have some very similar hurdles as well. That's just common to this whole,
hmm
um, navigating growing up in one family and trying to assimilate into another one.
Exactly.
Um,
Hard.
secrets, things you've been told that aren't necessarily true,
Hmm.
um, only to later meet truly get to know those parents and learn more of the truth than you've
Right.
ever been told or stories that were not true. Yeah,
Mhm. Well said, Patricia. Yeah,
it's
very.
important work, and it's important that um, more and more people write their stories and
Hmm.
get them out there. And also, even if you don't want to share it out into the world, like you've demonstrated here, writing is just, it's part of for many people, it's just part of the process of healing. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be read by anybody other than yourself,
Hmm.
but
Right.
for a lot of people, it's a way, something in putting it out there on the page
Hmm.
gives that grief a place to live that's not inside you,
Hmm.
you know?
Yes. That's true. I was just reading James Pennebaker, a social psychologist at the University of Texas, studied the impact of writing on like memoir writing. And it does improve one's physical and emotional health. It's, journaling. We've all heard about that. That is really true, Patricia. Yeah, writing is healing. Yeah, healing from trauma. What may be difficult to express out loud can be readily given voice through writing. Yeah. There again, Joan Didion. I don't know what I think until I write it down.
Yeah, I love that. I
Hmm.
love that.
Too.
I'm going to steal that quote from you.
Yeah, it's a good. It's
Yeah,
no, and it's true. That is so true. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
great. Well, why don't we open it up and let you to answer some questions and have some comments?
Patricia, we normally stop the recording before
Oh,
we start
okay.
Q&A,
Thank you for
just so
reminding me.
people can have a little
I'm still
privacy with
learning.
their questions. Yep. We
Okay, thank
often
you.
forget, so it's fine.
Stop recording. Does it say it stopped? There we go. You sure? Yes, I'm